The strangest thing about being thrown out of your own life is how quiet it sounds when the door closes. Vanessa didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even look angry. She just stood in the entryway of our house, pointed at a black suitcase sitting upright on the porch like it had been waiting all afternoon. "I packed what you need," she said. "The rest can be discussed later when you're less emotional." Less emotional. That was the phrase she used after 10 years of marriage, after my mother's funeral 8 months earlier, after every mortgage payment, every late night at the kitchen table, every time I told myself Vanessa was only distant because grief made people uncomfortable. I looked past her shoulder into the house and saw the hallway lamp still on, the one Evelyn Whitmore bought us when we moved in. My mother said it made the place look warm. Now it made everything look staged. Behind Vanessa, the living room was too neat, the pillows too straight, the framed photos turned slightly away from the door, as if the house itself had been told not to recognize me. "Vanessa," I said, keeping my voice low because the neighbors were unloading groceries, "what is this?" She gave me a small, practiced smile. "It's a boundary, Nathan. You need space. I need peace." Then she slid my house key off her finger and dropped it into a ceramic bowl beside the door. The sound was tiny, but it landed in my chest like a verdict. I didn't argue. Not because I agreed. Not because I was weak. I stayed quiet because something in her face told me this wasn't a fight that had started that morning. This had been arranged. Maybe for days. Maybe for weeks. Maybe longer. I picked up the suitcase handle. It was lighter than it should have been. That bothered me more than the locked door. A man knows the weight of his own life when it's been reduced to luggage. Mine felt like someone had chosen what I was allowed to keep. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. Vanessa glanced down the street, then back at me. "There's a Hampton Inn off Route 22. You always like practical things." Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "Don't make this embarrassing." Embarrassing. Not cruel. Not sudden. Embarrassing. Like I was the problem if anyone saw me standing on my porch with one suitcase and no key. She stepped back, closed the door, and this time the sound wasn't quiet. It was final. I sat in my truck for 7 minutes before I could turn the ignition. My phone buzzed once. A text for Vanessa. "Please do not come back tonight. We'll communicate in writing." I stared at that sentence until the screen dimmed. In writing. That was when I understood she had already moved the marriage into paperwork before I even knew it was over. I drove to the Hampton Inn because pride gets expensive when your hands are shaking. Room 214 smelled like carpet cleaner and air conditioning. I set the suitcase on the bed, but didn't open it right away. I kept looking at it like it belonged to someone else. Some poor guy I'd pity if I heard the story at a diner. Finally, I unzipped it. 2 pairs of jeans. 3 shirts. A shaving kit. My running shoes. No suit. No tax files. No framed photo of my mother. But tucked between a folded sweatshirt and a winter scarf was a brown leather wallet I hadn't seen since Evelyn died. My mother's wallet. I froze. Vanessa hated that wallet. She once called it a dusty little relic and asked why I kept it in the cedar box under our bed. I picked it up carefully, the way you pick up something that still remembers a person. Inside was her driver's license, a grocery rewards card, a faded picture of me at 12 years old, and behind the sleeve, an old bank card with one cracked corner. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, were 5 words that made the room feel colder. "Use this if she sends you away." I read the words on the back of the card until they stopped looking like handwriting and started looking like a warning. "Use this if she sends you away." My mother had written it in blue ink, slanted slightly upward the way all her notes did, as if even a grocery list needed hope. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed with the card in one hand and her wallet in the other, listening to the ice machine cough in the hallway. Evelyn had been careful in life. Careful with coupons, careful with birthday cards, careful with what she said about Vanessa. She never accused my wife of anything directly. She only asked quiet questions. Did Vanessa handle the mail when I was at work? Did I keep copies of financial documents outside the house? Did I trust people who became sweet only when they needed access? At the time, I thought grief and illness had made her suspicious. Now, in a rented room 20 miles from my own kitchen, every question came back with teeth. I turned the card over. It was from First Allegheny Bank, a small regional bank my mother had used before moving to Texas. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. The card had expired 7 years ago. The magnetic strip was scratched. The account number was partly faded. Whatever mystery my mother had left, it could not possibly live inside a piece of plastic old enough to belong in a junk drawer. Then my phone lit up. Vanessa again. Leave the suitcase as it is. I forgot something in it. I will pick it up tomorrow. My thumb hovered over the screen. She had not asked if I was safe. She had not asked where I was. She had not mentioned my clothes, my medication, my truck, or the fact that she had turned our marriage into an eviction with a doormat. She wanted the suitcase back. Not part of it. The suitcase. I looked at the brown wallet. Suddenly the room felt smaller. I zipped the suitcase halfway, then stopped. If Vanessa wanted something from it, I needed to know what before she touched it again. I removed every item and laid them on the bed in rows like evidence. Shirts, jeans, socks, shaving kit, phone charger, a paperback I had left on my nightstand. No documents. No hidden envelope. Nothing except the wallet. I checked every pocket twice. Inside the wallet, behind my childhood photo, there was a folded receipt from First Allegheny dated 3 months before Evelyn died. The ink was faint, but one line was clear: private client access updated. Beneath it was a handwritten note from my mother. Nathan, do not call first. Go in person. My chest tightened. 3 months before she died, Evelyn could barely walk across her apartment without resting. She had still gone to a bank and updated something. Not for herself. For me. I barely slept that night. Every time the heater clicked on, I pictured Vanessa standing in our bedroom, opening the cedar box, choosing my mother's wallet, and placing in my suitcase with hands steady enough to make it look accidental. By sunrise, the city outside the hotel window was gray and wet, the kind of morning that makes every sign look temporary. I put on the least wrinkled shirt Vanessa had packed, slid the old card into my coat pocket, and drove to First Allegheny's Dallas branch near Preston Road. The building looked too ordinary for the kind of fear I carried inside it. Beige stone, glass doors, a flag moving lazily above the entrance. I told myself I was there for a simple question. Maybe the card belonged to a closed account. Maybe the note was only my mother's way of making me feel less alone. But as I stepped out of the truck, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from an unknown number. Mr. Whitmore, this is First Allegheny Bank. Please bring the card inside. Do not give it to your wife. I stood beside the truck, staring at the message, realizing the bank already knew Vanessa's name and my mother's fear. The message made the bank entrance look less like a doorway and more like a line I could not uncross. I read it 3 times before I moved. Please bring the card inside. Do not give it to your wife. There was no signature beyond First Allegheny Bank. No extension number, no explanation for how anyone inside that building knew I was standing in the parking lot with my mother's expired card in my pocket. I looked through the glass doors and saw ordinary people doing ordinary things. A man signing a deposit slip. A woman bouncing a toddler on her hip. A security guard checking the clock above the lobby. Nothing about the place looked prepared to change my life. That almost made it worse. I walked inside and went to the first teller window. The young woman behind the glass smiled like she had smiled at 40 people before me. "How can I help you today?" she asked. I slid the old card across the counter without letting go right away. This belonged to my mother, Evelyn Whitmore. I received a message telling me to bring it in. Her smile softened into the careful expression people use around death. "I'm sorry for your loss, sir. Do you have an account number or identification?" I handed over my driver's license. She typed my name first. Nothing happened. Then she typed Evelyn's name. Her fingers slowed. She glanced at the card, then at my face, then back at the screen. "One moment, Mr. Whitmore." That was the first shift. Not panic yet, just a crack in the script. She picked up the card with 2 fingers and scanned it through a small reader beside her keyboard. The screen made a sharp sound, not loud, but every employee behind the counter seemed to hear it. A red box flashed across her monitor. I could not read the words, but I saw the color drain from her face. She did not touch the keyboard again. She lifted her hand halfway, as if she had been trained never to continue once that alert appeared. A door behind the teller stations opened almost immediately. A woman in a navy blazer stepped out, silver hair cut to her jaw, nameplate reading Marianne Cole, branch manager. She did not ask the teller what happened. She looked directly at the card. Then she looked at me. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, calm enough to make the room feel colder, "please come with me." I heard the teller whisper, "Should I clear the transaction?" Marianne answered without turning around. "Do not clear anything. Lock the session." That was when my stomach dropped. I followed her past the counter, past 2 offices with glass walls, into a private consultation room near the back. Marianne closed the door, then pressed a small button beneath the table. A soft click answered from the hallway. "Did you just lock the room?" I asked. "I secured the room," she said. "There's a difference." She sat across from me, but did not lean back. "Where did you get that card?" "In my suitcase," I said. "My wife packed it after she told me to leave." Marianne's eyes sharpened, not with surprise, but recognition. Did Vanessa Whitmore pack the wallet herself? Hearing my wife's full name in that room felt wrong, like finding her perfume on a stranger's coat. "I think so." "What?" Marianne placed my mother's card flat on the table, aligning it carefully with the edge. "Because this is not an active debit card. It is a legacy access credential. Your mother converted it before her death." I swallowed. "Converted it into what?" Marianne opened a drawer, removed a sealed internal form, and slid it toward herself, not me. At the top, I saw one phrase upside down: Restricted Survivor Protocol. She covered it with her hand before I could read more. "Before I explain, I need you to answer one question truthfully." Her voice dropped. "Did your wife tell you she came here yesterday?" Because according to this alert, she asked for access to the same vault less than 24 hours before she sent you away with one suitcase in hand. Marianne's question stayed between us like a glass wall. "Did your wife tell you she came here yesterday?" I wanted to say yes, because that would have made sense. Married people share plans. They knew where the other person went. They did not discover bank visits from a stranger in a locked room while holding an old card left by a mother. But the truth was smaller. "No," I said. "She did not tell me." Marianne did not react the way I expected. She did not look shocked. She looked confirmed. She turned the internal form toward herself and tapped a blank space with one polished nail. "Yesterday at 3:42, Vanessa Whitmore came into this branch and requested information connected to Evelyn Whitmore's private client file. She said she was acting on your behalf." My mouth went dry. "On my behalf?" "She said you were emotionally overwhelmed after your mother's passing, that you had become difficult to reach, and that she was trying to prevent important family matters from being neglected." Marianne looked at me over the form. She used the phrase protecting Nathan from himself. The words landed harder than the door had. Vanessa had not just removed me from the house. She had walked into a bank before doing it and started building a version of me that sounded unstable, irresponsible, and incapable of handling my own mother's affairs. I thought about her text from the night before. "We will communicate in writing." Not because she wanted peace, because she wanted a record. Did anyone believe her? I asked. Marianne folded her hands. Enough to start a conversation. Not enough to give her what she wanted. What did she want? That is where the problem begins. She slid a visitor log across the table. Vanessa's signature was there in smooth black ink, decorative, the same signature she used on holiday cards and contractor checks. Beside her name, under purpose of visit, someone had typed estate assistance. But below that, in a smaller note box, another line had been added. Spouse claims husband cannot appear. She said I cannot appear. She said you were refusing to handle matters related to your mother and that she might need emergency spousal access to prevent the loss of family assets. I stared at the phrase. Emergency spousal access. It sounded official, but I knew Vanessa. She loved words that made selfishness look responsible. Marianne continued. The teller referred her to a private client associate. That associate should have stopped the discussion immediately. Instead, he searched your mother's file enough to trigger a warning. Trevor Lang, I said, remembering the name from the badge I had seen through the glass. Marianne's expression tightened. You noticed him. He looked like he wanted to disappear. He may have reason to. She opened a folder and removed a printed screenshot. Most of it was redacted, but I could see 3 visible entries. Evelyn Whitmore, restricted survivor protocol, vault inquiry attempted. The final line, may my hands go cold. Requested override using spouse statement. Vanessa asked for an override. She asked whether a spouse could confirm that the legal heir was unavailable. Marianne paused before adding. Then she asked if old access credentials ever expired. I looked down at my mother's cracked card. For the first time since Vanessa closed the door, I felt something other than humiliation. Not relief. Not anger exactly. It was the sharp awareness that my mother had seen a pattern I had excused for years. Evelyn had known Vanessa would not simply leave me. She would try to step over me. Why would the bank text me? I asked. Marianne turned the card over and pointed to the handwritten warning without touching the ink. Because your mother placed a contact instruction on this credential. If anyone other than you inquired about it, the bank was to notify you directly. Not by mail, not through a spouse. Directly. She reached for the phone on the table. And because Vanessa came back this morning before you arrived. My throat tightened. She is here. Marianne looked toward the frosted glass door. She is in the lobby, asking why we locked you in a room. Nathan stood so quickly that the chair legs scraped the carpet. For one reckless second, I wanted to open the door and ask Vanessa how long she had been standing out there, polished and patient, pretending to be worried while the bank treated my mother's card like a loaded secret. Marianne raised one hand. Do not engage her yet. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of someone who had seen ordinary families turn into legal storms inside quiet offices. She is not allowed beyond the lobby without your consent, and right now, I am not recommending that consent. Through the frosted glass, I could see movement, a pale blur crossing back and forth near the reception desk. Vanessa was pacing. That alone told me something. My wife did not pace in public. She curated herself. Why is she here? I asked. Marianne picked up the phone and spoke to the receptionist. Keep Mrs. Whitmore comfortable in the lobby. Offer coffee. Do not discuss account status. And ask Trevor Lang to step into consultation room 3. She hung up before anyone could argue. Vanessa came back, claiming she forgot personal property in your suitcase. She said the item may contain confidential information belonging to your late mother, and that you were too upset to understand its importance. I almost smiled, but there was nothing funny in it. She means the wallet. Likely. Marianne opened the door just enough for Trevor to enter, then closed it behind him. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with a tie too tight and a face already apologizing. He did not sit until Marianne told him to. Mr. Lang, she said, I need you to explain yesterday's interaction with Mrs. Whitmore. Trevor looked at me, then at the card on the table, and his throat moved. She said she was Mr. Whitmore's wife. That part is true, Marianne said. Continue. She said Evelyn Whitmore had left some things unresolved and that Mr. Whitmore was not in a good state. She said she was trying to help before late fees or estate complications started. Did she provide authorization? No formal autorización. His voice dropped, but she had documents. Marianne's eyes narrowed. What documents? Trevor swallowed. A copy of their marriage certificate. A printed obituary for Evelyn. A utility bill with the Whitmore address. And a handwritten note she said Nathan had left at home. My skin prickled. What note? Trevor slid a folded copy from his folder. I made a scan for the interaction file. Marianne took it, read it, and looked at me before placing on the table. The note was not mine, but it was close enough to my handwriting to make my stomach turn. It said, Vanessa, handle whatever Mom left. I cannot deal with it. I never wrote that. The words came out flat. Marianne did not ask if I was sure. She turned to Trevor. What did you access after seeing this? Trevor's face reddened. I searched Evelyn's profile. The system showed the survivor protocol and a vault flag. I did not open the file, but I printed the visible header page because Mrs. Whitmore said she needed proof that something existed. Marianne went still. You printed a restricted header? Only the top page. Did it show the credential type? Trevor hesitated one beat too long. Yes. Marianne closed her eyes for half a second. Did it show the authentication note? He whispered, part of it. The room changed around me. Vanessa had not guessed about the old card. She had been handed just enough information to know what to look for, Then she had packed my suitcase around it like a trap. Before anyone spoke again, Marianne's phone buzzed. She read the screen, then looked at me. "Graham Ellison, your mother's estate attorney, is 10 minutes away." Trevor exhaled in relief. Marianne did not. "Do not be relieved yet," she said, "because if Mrs. Whitmore saw even part of that authentication note, she may already know the phrase required to open the vault, and if she says it first, your mother's final instruction may force us to record her claim before we stop her." Graham Ellison arrived carrying a rain-speckled leather briefcase and the kind of silence that makes other people straighten their backs. He was tall, white-haired, and dressed like he had never once hurried for anyone. But the moment Marianne opened the consultation room door, his eyes went to the old card on the table. "Not to me. Not to Trevor. The card. Evelyn's safeguard," he said, almost under his breath. Vanessa's voice floated from the lobby before the door shut again. "I am his wife. I have a right to know why he is being kept back there." Graham paused, then looked at Marianne. "Do not let her near this room." That was when my fear turned into something heavier. If my mother's attorney recognized the card on sight, then this had not been a sentimental note tucked into an old wallet. It had been a plan. Marianne explained Trevor's mistake in clipped, professional sentences. Trevor sat with both hands locked between his knees, looking smaller every time she said the word restricted. Graham listened without interrupting. When she finished, he opened his briefcase and removed a sealed cream envelope with my mother's signature across the flap. Before Evelyn died, she instructed me that this envelope could be opened only in the presence of First Allegheny Management, the named survivor, and the original credential. He set it beside the card. "Nathan, that means you." My throat tightened around words I could not form. Graham did not make it easier by being gentle. "Your wife may know part of the authentication note because of yesterday's improper printout." But Evelyn anticipated that possibility. Marianne looked up sharply. "There's a secondary phrase?" "No," Graham said. "There's a false first phrase." Trevor whispered, "False." Graham's face hardened just enough to make the young banker look down. The visible header was bait. If anyone asked about the vault after seeing only the header, the bank was required to document the request as hostile third-party interest. For the first time all morning, I breathed fully. Vanessa had not stolen the key. She had stolen the warning label. Graham turned to me. "The real phrase was never printed. Evelyn said you would know it if you still remembered where she kept your father's watch." The room disappeared for a second. I was 13 again, standing in my mother's kitchen after my father's funeral, watching her place his scratched Timex inside a flour tin because, she said, no thief ever looked where bread began. I looked at Graham and said, "Where bread begins." Marianne entered the phrase into a secure tablet. The screen turned green. Somewhere beyond the consultation room, a lock released with a low mechanical sound. Graham nodded once. Now we opened the vault. We moved through a side hallway, away from the lobby, past a door marked Private Client Services. I caught one glimpse of Vanessa through the glass wall. She was standing near a chair she had not sat in, phone in hand, eyes fixed on us. When she saw Graham beside me, her expression changed from impatience to calculation. She knew him, or worse, she knew of him. The vault room was colder than the rest of the bank, bright and spotless, with rows of steel boxes lined like secrets waiting their turn. Marianne signed a log. Graham signed beneath her. As she placed my mother's card into a reader mounted beside a larger box near the end of the wall. The card clicked, the green light flashed, and box 417 slid forward. Inside was not cash, not jewelry, not gold coins, or some dramatic movie treasure. There was a sealed digital recorder, a blue folder, a small brass key, and a letter addressed in my mother's handwriting. For Nathan, if Vanessa removes him from the home. I reached for it, but Graham stopped me gently. Before you read that, there is something you need to understand. He opened the blue folder and stared at the first page. For the first time, his composed face faltered. "Nathan," he said quietly, "your mother started this file 2 days after your wedding." Then he turned the page and found Vanessa's name in red ink. Graham turned the page slowly, as if the paper itself deserved a warning before he exposed what it carried. Across the top was a date from 10 years earlier, 2 days after my wedding, and beneath it my mother had written one sentence in careful blue ink. Vanessa asked too many questions about what Nathan owns alone. I felt heat climb my neck. She met my mother for brunch that week, I said. She said they were bonding. Graham did not look up. Evelyn called me the next morning. He spread several pages across the steel table in the vault room. They were not dramatic by themselves. Notes, copies of emails, a printed calendar entry, a photo of a form Vanessa had left on Evelyn's counter. But together, they made a shape I could not ignore. Vanessa had not started planning yesterday. Yesterday was only the day she thought the door was finally open. Marianne stood near the vault entrance, arms folded, giving me privacy without leaving me alone. Trevor was not with us anymore. He had been escorted to a separate office to write a statement, which somehow made the air feel cleaner. Graham lifted the digital recorder. Your mother asked me to play this only after you saw the first page. He set it on the table and pressed the button. For 3 seconds, there was only a faint hiss. Then my mother's voice filled the small room, thinner than I remembered, but still unmistakably hers. Nathan, if you're hearing this, I am sorry. I hoped I was wrong about her. My hands gripped the edge of the table. Evelyn continued. At first, I told myself Vanessa was just practical. She asked about insurance because couples plan. She asked about emergency contacts because families prepare. But then she asked whether a spouse could redirect estate notices if the son was grieving, and whether a widow's private accounts could be handled by marriage rather than blood. I closed my eyes. Every word felt like it had been waiting behind a locked door. I did not want to turn you against your wife, my mother said. So I watched. I copied. I dated everything. When she told me you were too trusting with paperwork, I knew she was not admiring you. She was measuring you. Graham stopped the recording before it finished. There is more, he said, but you need context first. He opened another section of the folder and showed me a document titled Proposed Family Support Authorization. Vanessa's name was typed at the bottom as preparer. She wanted Evelyn to sign this. I asked. She presented it as convenience, Graham said. It would have allowed Vanessa to receive certain bank communications, estate reminders, and medical billing notices. Not ownership, but access. Access often comes before pressure. I remembered Vanessa bringing my mother's soup, organizing her pill bottles, smiling when Evelyn called her thoughtful. I had been grateful. My mother had been taking notes. Graham turned to a photograph of a yellow sticky note in Vanessa's handwriting. Need Nathan out of the loop until he calms down. My breath shortened. That is the same phrase she used at the bank. Yes, Graham said, and Evelyn noticed it years before anyone here did. Marianne's phone vibrated. She checked it, then looked through the glass panel toward the hallway. Mrs. Whitmore is asking to speak with Graham Ellison by name. Graham's expression did not change, but his hand closed over the recorder. She should not know I am here unless she saw us pass the lobby. Marianne read the next message from the receptionist. She says she knows the required phrase and that the vault contains property belonging to the marriage. Graham looked at me, and for the first time, I saw urgency break through his discipline. The recorder was still paused in front of us, my mother's final message unfinished. Then Vanessa's voice carried down the hallway, clear enough to reach the vault door. Tell them the phrase is emergency spousal access. Graham whispered, that is the false phrase. In the moment she said it, Marianne's secure tablet began recording every word as hostile interest under Evelyn's protocol immediately. The tablet gave one chime, and Marianne looked at the screen as if my mother had just reached through the system and pressed a button herself. Hostile interest logged. Voice capture active. Graham did not smile, but the tension in his shoulders eased. Evelyn wanted her to say it, he said. That phrase was never a key. It was a trapdoor. Vanessa's heels clicked closer beyond the vault corridor. Nathan, she called, sweet enough for strangers, sharp enough for me. This is getting ridiculous. Come out here and stop letting these people confuse you. For the first time since she put that suitcase on the porch, I did not feel like the man outside the house. I felt like the man standing inside the truth. Marianne stepped into the corridor first, tablet in hand. Graham followed, carrying the blue folder and the recorder. I came last, with my mother's wallet in my coat pocket and the cracked card between my fingers. Vanessa was waiting near the private client doorway, wearing the cream coat she saved for fundraisers and difficult conversations. Her eyes flicked to the folder, then to Graham, then to the card. She recovered fast. "Nathan, thank God. I was worried. You vanished with property from your mother's estate." Graham answered before I could. "Mrs. Whitmore, you are currently being recorded under Evelyn Whitmore's restricted survivor protocol." Vanessa blinked once. "I do not consent to that." Marianne's voice was even. "You initiated the protected phrase in a secured area after requesting access to a restricted vault. Consent is not required for internal fraud prevention documentation." The word fraud changed Vanessa's face more than any insult could have. Not guilt exactly. Calculation interrupted. "Fraud? I am his wife." Graham opened the folder. "That is not authorization." Vanessa turned to me, then, lowering her voice into the version she used when she wanted me to feel unreasonable. "Nathan, your mother was sick. She misunderstood things. I was trying to help you." I took out the folded note from the hotel room, the one she had texted me about without naming it. "Then why did you pack her wallet in my suitcase and demand the suitcase back before sunrise?" For half a second, silence did what shouting never could. It showed the missing answer. Marianne placed the visitor log on a side table. Graham placed the forged note beside it. Vanessa's eyes went straight to the handwriting that was supposed to be mine. "I did not write that," I said. "And you knew I did not." Vanessa folded her arms. "You were not handling anything. Someone had to be practical." Graham turned another page and revealed the newest document, one I had not seen in the vault. It was a copy of a courier receipt from 6 weeks earlier, signed by Vanessa, addressed to Evelyn Whitmore Family File, care of Graham Ellison. Practical people usually do not send and sign estate amendment requests to attorneys behind their husband's back, he said. Vanessa's composure cracked. "That was a draft. It named you as temporary family coordinator," Graham said. "It also attempted to redirect bank correspondence to a post office box in Plano." My stomach tightened. "You opened a post office box?" Vanessa looked at me like the question itself disappointed her. I opened options. Marianne checked her tablet again. "Mrs. Whitmore, did Trevor Lang provide you with a printout showing any part of the authentication note?" Vanessa hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough, but she still tried. He confirmed there was a process. Graham pressed play on the recorder. My mother's unfinished voice returned, calm and fragile and devastating. "If Vanessa ever calls herself the practical one, ask what she already moved before she told you there was a problem." Vanessa stopped breathing normally. Graham paused the recording. "Nathan," he said, "the brass key in the vault does not open a bank box. It opens a storage unit your mother rented under my office authorization." Marianne held up a new access log. Vanessa's name was on it too. Graham looked toward me. "She visited that unit yesterday before she came to the bank." Graham did not ask whether I wanted to go to the storage unit. He closed the folder, handed Marianne the access log, and said, "We need to preserve whatever remains." Vanessa took one step back. It was small, but it was the first honest thing she had done all morning. The facility was 12 minutes away, off a service road behind a tire shop and beige warehouses. Marianne followed with a bank security officer, because Evelyn's protocol now treated every movement like evidence. Vanessa rode, separately with her phone pressed to her ear, trying to sound inconvenienced instead of cornered. Unit C, 19 had a clean brass lock. The key from the vault fit perfectly. Inside were 6 plastic tubs, a metal filing cabinet, and one narrow cedar box I recognized immediately. It had sat under my mother's bed for years, the same box Vanessa claimed she could not find when she packed my suitcase. Graham photographed everything before touching it. Then he opened the cabinet and removed a folder labeled Correspondence Intercepted. The first envelope was addressed to me at my house, forwarded to the Plano post office box Vanessa had called an option. The second held bank notices. The third contained a letter from Evelyn dated 1 week before she died. "Nathan," it read, "if you found this because she sent you away, do not confuse being discarded with being unprotected. I had to sit on the concrete floor because my knees stopped trusting me. There was no fortune hidden in the tubs. No secret mansion, no mountain of cash. What my mother had stored was cleaner and stronger than money. Dates, copies, recordings, proof that Vanessa had been trying to place herself between me and every official channel Evelyn used. Graham found a final piece in the cedar box, beneath my father's watch. It was a notarized directive naming me sole survivor contact for Evelyn's protected accounts and barring spousal substitution without my physical presence. Attached to it was a photograph of the old card, signed across the back, with the instruction that any attempt to return it by a spouse should be treated as evidence of interference. Vanessa whispered. She set me up. For once, I answered without heat. No, she gave you choices. You kept choosing access. Marion documented Vanessa's earlier visit to the unit, where she had tried to remove the cedar box but was denied because her name was not on the authorization sheet. Trevor's printout, the forged note, the post office box, and Vanessa's false phrase were added to one file. Nobody shouted. Nobody dragged anyone through a public scene. That made it more final. By late afternoon, Graham had filed emergency notices freezing all estate-related inquiries outside my direct authorization. First, Allegheny suspended Trevor pending review. Vanessa signed a receipt acknowledging she had no authority over Evelyn's materials, and her hand shook just enough for me to notice. She asked if we could talk at the house. I looked at the suitcase in my truck, then at my mother's wallet on the passenger seat. In writing, I said. The words were hers, but they felt different in my mouth. That night, I did not go back to the Hampton Inn. Graham arranged for me to stay in a quiet apartment used for out-of-town clients, a furnished place with white walls and a grocery store parking lot. It was not home, but it did not pretend to be. I placed Evelyn's wallet on the kitchen counter and slid the cracked card back into its sleeve. I understood why she had left something so ordinary to do something so powerful. A card could be ignored. A wallet could be packed by mistake. A son who had spent years doubting his instincts could finally hold proof small enough to fit in his hand. I played the last minute of her recording before sleeping. Her voice said, I cannot keep pain from finding you, Nathan. I could only leave a door that opened when everyone else closed theirs. I slept with the old car beside the lamp, not because it was valuable, but because it was the first key that ever gave me back myself.